I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. At a Senate Commerce Committee hearing last week, Senator Mike Lee proposed an amendment to combat rising gas prices. The Utah senator slammed President Biden, saying he has had a, quote, crusade against reliable domestic energy sources. Listen here to see what his amendment would do.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Shortly, I'll be calling up the Lee amendments number 37, number 28, and number 36 to S4217. But I do want to speak for just a moment before doing that about some of these issues. We've got rising gas prices that are being borne heavily by many American families, and lower middle class and rural Americans who are feeling the incredible punch to the gut every time they fill up their gas tank, if in fact they can afford to even fill it up all the way. The national and the Utah gas prices average around $4.60 per gallon and are projected to rise even higher in the coming months. Our rising gas prices today reflect shock waves that provide a snapshot of the volatility of energy markets and terrible regulatory policies and decisions and the substantial market uncertainty of the future. Americans are struggling to cope with these prices on top of an economy that's already experiencing massive systemic inflation. President Biden, for his part, has continued to point fingers at everyone else, everyone and everything else except his own policies, telling us to pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. But the reality remains that President Biden's crusade against reliable domestic energy sources has largely resulted in our current state of high energy prices. Let's take just a quick look back at the signals that the Biden administration has sent to the industry that the Biden administration itself accuses of hiking, has sent to the industry of hiking prices. During his campaign, then presidential candidate Joe Biden guaranteed what he referred to, quote unquote, as the end of fossil fuels. In January of 2021, shortly after he took office, immediately, in fact, President Biden issued an executive order to stop all oil and gas leasing on federal land. President Biden's Securities and Exchange Commission has proposed new regulations to weaponize publicly traded companies against traditional energies. President Biden accused oil and gas companies of price gouging without evidence, despite the fact that energy prices skyrocketed after he took office as a result of his policies. After all this, the White House has actively lobbied OPEC rather than the United States to increase oil production. Now, just recently, Gina McCarthy stated, quote, President Biden remains absolutely committed to not moving forward with additional drilling on public lands, close quote. Last week in a hearing, when I asked if she agreed with that assessment, Secretary Haaland, whose department, the Department of the Interior, oversees drilling on public lands, responded, quote, I don't know. I have plenty of other examples that I could point to, but instead of looking to address these negative signals and misguided regulatory policies that are sending energy markets into a tailspin, the administration, as well as the Senate and House Democrats, are suggesting that the solution is to have more government micromanagement of our markets and that gas prices will somehow come down if we just empower more federal bureaucrats to look over your shoulder. In fact, the House Democrats just passed legislation that astoundingly would give the federal government the power to enact what I can only call price controls on gasoline. The failed energy policies of the 1970s are calling, and congressional Democrats are answering with the same destructive policies that led to sharp price increases, gas shortages, and long lines at the pump. And while price controls are an absolutely absurd and destructive policy position, today's legislation contains concerning policies that would cause further harm to this already volatile market. The bill before us contains a number of provisions that could empower the Federal Trade Commission with sweeping rulemaking powers to regulate vast swaths of the economy and investigate an undefined term, quote, suspicious behavior, close quote. What could go wrong? Increase and expand the data producing burdens that companies already have and make it easier to assess penalties on energy companies that run afoul of the numerous ambiguous definitions in this bill. Now, the FTC currently has the authority. It's already got the authority and has for a decade and a half to look into these issues in the oil and gas market, and it has, in fact, investigated before. But it's never found evidence of wrongdoing to justify the expanded use of this authority that this bill grants, especially when the terms are so ambiguous that it would provide potentially unlimited government authority, discretion even, over this industry. This is no solution for the American people who are longing for the restoration of certainty in the market so that gas prices can be lowered. It's for that reason that I'm proud to join a number of my colleagues today who, all of us combined, have offered over 50 energy policy solutions to this legislation. These solutions would increase U.S. energy production, restore regulatory certainty, push back on the harmful signals coming from the administration, and ensure that Americans can afford their energy costs in the future. I won't be calling up every one of those amendments today, but I would like to call up three. And I'd like to start by calling up Lee Amendment number 37 to S 4217.